this is Jessica from Ecology, and I'm helping to coordinate the task force. And we can go ahead and pop over to the other folks from Ecology. So maybe Sarah, and then Jen, and then Ryan. To start with, let's do that.
Good morning. This is Sarah Carrick, and I'm the lead chemist for the task force.
Good morning. This is Jen Carlson, and I'm not on the task force, but I help Ecology with the legislative coordination.
This is Ryan Zabralski with the lab accreditation unit within Ecology, leading the PT work group.
And Annette, if you want to say hello and make sure yours works as well, we're just kind of introducing and saying hello. We can't hear you. Shoot.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Whew.
Yay.
Thanks for your patience. I don't know why I'm struggling with my audio issues, but there you have it. So I'm using my phone, and I'm glad it works.
It's good to have backups.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and introduce the rest of the folks from Ecology, Anastasia and Tarlin, which I think both of your things work, but go ahead.
Hi, this is Anastasia Green. I'm a Secretary Senior for Cannabis Science Task Force. I'm here to support the teams, and today I'll be supporting the meeting.
Good morning, Tarlin Poole with Ecology, the Program Manager's Assistant.
All right, let's hop over to the private labs next. How about Amber, and then Nick, and then Jeff?
Good morning, this is Amber Wise from Medicine Creek Analytics, and I'm a member of this task force steering committee.
Good morning, Nick Mosley with Confidence Analytics, and a member of the steering committee.
And Jeff, if you happen to be talking, we cannot hear you.
This is Jeff Dowdy with Capital Analysis, steering committee member.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, let's hop over to LCB now. And we cannot hear anyone talking, if anyone's talking right now.
I was trying to let Kendra go first, but Nick Pullman, Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board chemist.
Good morning, Kendra Hodgson, Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board Steering Committee designee.
All right, and Department of Health next.
This is Caroline West. I'm a chemist with the Department of Health and also the lead for the metals work group.
Is Shelly on the line? Doesn't look like. Okay, let's pop over to Department of Ag.
Yeah, good morning. This is Brad White, WSDA, and I'm your sole ag representative for today. Great.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Everyone, I think, can see the agenda that's up. And our first speaker is Ryan, who will be giving us an update on the proficiency testing work group. So take it away, Ryan.
All right, thank you, Jess. Tarlin or Anastasia, do you mind passing me the ball for the presentation?
Did it pass?
Looks like it passed Sarah for some reason. Wonder if I can grab it. Let me see.
Oh, well, that's weird.
You want me to try to move it?
I got it.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Thank you. All righty, let me presentation go 5. All right. Whoops, wrong button. Second. Oh no, don't close it all the way up. Cool. All right, so I need to share my screen.
There we go.
There we go. Whoops. I've got the wrong screen going on. 1 second. Having a lovely day with technology. Try that again. That's better. All right. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the technical hiccups. You don't get to see my lovely face today. I've been having a lot of internet connectivity issues. So to keep the bandwidth going, I was just going to present my presentation and take from there. So, all right. So as you guys are aware, PT work group, the state furloughs last month kind of made timing a little bit difficult. So we were only able to have one PT work group meeting since our previous steering committee meeting. And it was a relatively short meeting on June 30th. At that meeting, we initially gave a little recap of the COVID-related furloughs for the state agencies, and just kind of let all the people that weren't aware know what that was going to look like. The first item of our actual discussion was an update from me about how accreditation under ecology works currently, how we envision it looking down the road, highlighting the use of our LAU procedural manual, which has been shared with the group. We noted that what is likely going to be the case when ecology takes over accreditation is we will have 2 separate manuals for environmental and cannabis that will overall be very, very similar, with all changes from the environmental model to the cannabis model being things that are only absolutely necessary and with solid scientific backing. After that discussion, we discussed the possibility of contingency plans for the trial study location if and when COVID continues to be as much of an issue as it is, and what possible requirements we would need to look at if WSDA was unable to host due to COVID. However, since then, Mike and I have chatted, and he expressed to me that he has no problem being the host lab until once all the IAAs and other documentations are sorted out. Our next meeting will be tomorrow from 9 to noon, and we'll discuss this and a little bit, as well as the update about the trial study that I have for you here for the rest of the meeting or presentation. So, all right. So just so you guys know, the rest of the presentation I have is going to just be dedicated to talking about with the trial study. Quite a bit has changed since our last steering committee meeting, and I just wanted to give you all an update on how that's going. So start off, just give you guys the recap of the goals of the trial study is to test all the mechanisms needed to implement an in-state in-matrix PT model. All work groups, as well as the steering committee, have discussed at length the need for in-matrix PTs, especially for tests such as pesticides and cannabinoids. Excuse me. This would keep us on the leading edge of this young, evolving regulatory industry with other states such as Oregon, Nevada, Colorado, and all of Canada. In-matrix PT model also would mirror the non-cannabis regulatory PT requirements that many of us in the agencies currently work with, whether it's the USDA, the FDA, EPA, CLIA, TNI, the list kind of goes on from there. We wanted to make sure that we tested the entire process of the model, from the acquisition of the raw material for PT production to the disposal of the material at the participating labs, including but not limited to the effect on business of the host lab, traceability of the PT material, difficulty of transportation of the material from purchase to host lab to participating labs, et cetera, et cetera. In order to set up the permanent model for the most success, we needed this trial study to mirror the entire process as much as we could possibly do. This will provide us an opportunity to work out kinks prior to the transfer of accreditation to ecology in 2024. However, due to our the task force timeline, we really need to probably get this done before fall of 2021, if not sooner, in order to incorporate everything we find into both the report and rulemaking occurring after that, but prior to July of 2024. So here's a little recap of the timeline. Development of this trial study began in the March and April meetings of the work group and was the primary focus of those meetings and has remained an ongoing topic since. The idea of the trial study was proposed to the agencies and steering committee at the 416 steering committee meeting with no opposition to moving forward, but we all recognize that a lot of development was still needed. After the 428 work group meeting, remaining challenges were not within the work group's expertise or authority to overcome, so development was moved on to those within the agencies, whether they were on the work group or not, to help continue to move this forward, with items such as interagency agreements, financing, scheduling, licensing, and all those other background pieces. So during that process, a couple of significant hurdles came up, particularly licensing, and then there would be a break in traceability. And don't mean to throw you on the spot too much, Kendra, but I just don't think I could do it justice to your guys' investigation to this, trying to represent it myself. So do you mind just kind of recapping what the issues you found were, what steps you took, and what you learned from that?
Yep, so as has been reviewed, the goal and the recommendation was to start, and I'm going to call it as it's basically a field study, to test out the FANOVA model within Matrix. There are a number of regulatory hurdles that are presented, and in trying to determine if this was feasible for us to do, we initially had thought we might have a workaround. We presented that workaround and had it reviewed by the LCB rules coordinator, our assistant attorney general, enforcement, and licensing. And what was discovered is ultimately that the hurdles are at a statute level, which means the board does not have regulatory authority to make a rule or grant an exception for things that are in statute. And the statutory challenges are that in this model, the business would be neither a lab, nor a licensee, nor a transporter, nor a Washington-based business, and not have any rights to sell marijuana in the state of Washington. Because of all of those things, we've had some conversations that the in-matrix part of this does not work to be legal for the study. This would be a much longer path, and with current agendas, it's not something that we will be proposing statute changes to for the legislative session in 2021. It would be a much longer term process. So my understanding, we shared this with Department of Ecology upon us knowing that, and I believe that as a result, the study has taken just a little bit of a twist. It's still going to happen, but not necessarily in the marijuana matrix.
Yeah. Thank you, Kendra. So that being said, the twist she's alluding to is we're going to move this forward. We're going to have to use hemp for this trial study instead of retail marijuana, just because of the hurdles she presented. Although this isn't ideal, since there will be certain aspects of the permanent model that we will not get a chance to take a look at, we'll still get a look at other logistical challenges that we've brought up. So just so you guys know, because of my scheduling, I haven't been able to bring this up formally to the work group, although they are aware of it. So we haven't got a chance to kind of dig too deep into this development. So just so you guys are aware of that. However, this will be the primary topic of tomorrow's discussion at tomorrow's meeting. So here are the things we identified initially, and I think we still look to gain with this trial study, which is why I think personally we want to keep moving forward. We get to learn the quality of the PT materials. Is going to be any better than what's currently available. Similarly, we're going to get a look at the PT provider and making sure that it is an improvement from the current status quo. And then another critical thing, especially in this case for Mike, for the trial study, but if we continue to utilize WSDA in the long run, how much of a burden to business to the host lab this will be. We'll get a look at transportation from the material once it's produced from the host lab to the participating labs. We'll get a look at the PT provider's responsiveness to inquiries, delivery time of material, and then professionalism of the PT provider, because it's my understanding that in these in-state models that FANOVA has, it's a lot more exclusive, just kind of working with TIE instead of FANOVA, the entity. So most of these things are identified, and we put on this grading sheet that we have discussed before that the labs are going to have to review the trial study to provide feedback for us to add into the report going forward. So, of course, we still have things to gain. Here's the things, just so you guys know, these are the things like me personally, and maybe a couple others in the group have identified of what the disadvantages of moving forward that we're going to have to make our best guess on. Challenges with the acquisition of the raw material to produce the PT, such as, who's the person that's going to be purchasing the material, whether it's an agency entity, the PT provider himself, or something else, how to maintain traceability of the material. Because in the retail space, once it is purchased out of the retail space, it disappears out of the traceability system. And at some point of the process, this material would have to probably come back in order for this to work. Therefore, another thing we looked at was the disposal of the material from the labs, because, I mean, the labs can maybe speak to this, but production, my understanding is disposal of marijuana samples is a little bit different than when you're disposing of hemp that are used in PTs or whatever else. Tied into that is how material is handled within the laboratory. And then lastly, just whatever things would have popped up in that, I guess, front half or front third of the process that we're not going to have a chance to take a look at, just whatever unforeseen challenges come up, so there are those things. I'm personally confident that we can move forward and this is still going to be a useful endeavor. I believe it's better to have some idea of what challenges exist and for us to add to the report to the legislature. Providing this information is going to be critical to convincing them that the challenges we have identified are worth overcoming in order to move this forward, whether it's at the RCW or WAC level. So at that point, I'd like to turn it over for any questions or discussion. Again, reminding you guys, we haven't had a chance as a work group to discuss this in length, so I might not have answers to everybody's questions at this point, but I can get back to you at our next meeting and figure out what we've discussed. With that, I'll go ahead and transfer the ball back to actually, do you mind grabbing the ball from me, Tarlin, just because it seems like I've minimized my window for WebEx and can't get it sorted out.
Thank you for that, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Jessica, let me just, I don't know if you can see me, but I got a virtual background. It's kind of fun.
You've gone to the beach.
You got to the beach.
I'm gonna go take a run in the ocean here shortly. Great presentation, Ryan. That pretty much sums up, I think, what I understand too, where we are with the PT. So, not ideal, probably the best we can do at this time. And so there are still some things that will need to be figured out, and some of those things will be on the agency's shoulders to do. So so as long as you can just sort of capture the essence of what needs to be done in order to make it work, and then I think that will be great. And then you guys can move on and not have to keep spinning your wheels on those authority issues. So great job, group.
Thank you. Like I said, I'm really confident that going forward with this is still a very, very worthwhile endeavor. So I just want to make sure that we get as much information from this study as we can within statutes and rules that we have. So hopefully we can provide enough evidence to the legislature that take a look at those, but that is yet to be seen, and we'll just deal with whatever happens.
All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions or comments, our next item on the agenda is a presentation from Caroline on the metals work group, an update from the metals work group. Or I'm sorry. The next thing on the agenda is an update from Brad for the an update from the potency work group and a motion, which hopefully everybody has had a chance to review.
Yes, thank you. So,
Take it away, Brad.
great. I was supposed to meet with Mike virtually, of course, before he went on vacation and go over a PowerPoint and then run that past the group. And I let him get away without doing that. So we don't have the PowerPoint, and it's probably just as well because I would just be reading a PowerPoint to you that I don't understand. So we'll have Mike bring that up at the next meeting if it's at all pertinent still at the time. But if anybody else that's working on that group wanted to put anything out there before we get to the motion, that would be great. If not, we could just move on to the motion. So hearing none, I guess we're going to go to the motion.
Anything from the work group? Anybody want to say anything about?
Yeah, can somebody give a little bit of a background on what the what the motion is about, what the discussion that went into it, who is involved in that? So we can have some context.
And sorry to put folks on the spot, but
Yeah, no,
thank you,
that's
Sarah.
okay. That's okay. I was having a little technical difficulty here. So the motion itself is kind of self-explanatory. But I can go through a little bit of the background of what the work group discussed. I don't have any slides or anything for a screen, so just bear with me. So the potency work group, let's see, has met twice now, and they just kind of discussed the current challenges and what everybody's using currently for testing potency. There was a discussion about whether the group wanted to go with performance-based methods or go with just a selective method. So there's a little bit of discussion on that, and I don't think anybody has set a pathway forward yet. Most of I think the discussions, well, the first meeting was relatively short just because we didn't have as much attendance as we had hoped. And then we got into the discussion about the moisture testing and how the steering committee had, said that this work group would address the moisture methods along with potency. And the discussion launched into whether the moisture test was a separate test or a test to be combined with potency. And then the discussion turned into that the route that should be taken should be the dry weight or as is testing, sorry, not using a dry weight based off of moisture test. And then that is what our motion turned into, is the potency test will be an as-is test, just like the pesticide work group came up with, rather than a dry weight correction, which could inflate potency. And I think Nick had some points about what the LCB had issued a letter or memo to all the labs previously, and that has been rescinded. I don't know if Nick wants to chime in and add that information. Go for it, Nick.
Sure. This was pre my time with the agency, but the agency made a decision previously that there won't be dry weight corrections, especially for potency, and has shared that with the labs numerous times by now, that please stop dry weight correcting theoretically or physically on sample.
So that makes the motion and should be an easy an easy motion to pass as an as is. The testing should be done as is, and no moisture, no drying and dry weight corrections. So I don't know if we have the motion to put up. I don't have it. If Anastasia or
I'm looking at it, Sarah, and I guess I just wasn't really sure what as is meant.
So as is as received. So as it is shipped to you, you do not oven dry it prior to testing it.
Okay. And the cons, so apparently potency is affected by moisture. Is that what I'm getting out of this? Is that why there would be a dry weight component ever considered?
So the samples come in and they have a moisture test, and I believe it's 15% moisture that they have to be under, or else they fail a moisture test. The AHP had given a process for drying the samples, and I think there was some confusion in the labs on whether they should be drying them and applying that correction. There also are nefarious reasons for drying and inflating potency, which I'm sure nobody's doing that.
Okay, so moisture is related to the potency score. That was my question.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
But during the process of drying, you could also dry, and depending on how you dry, you could remove some other things that aren't moisture, like the terpenes and such. So there's some.
Okay.
But yes, you're correct.
Okay. So if I'm reading the con right for the motion, it would be that there would still need to be an adjustment made for that to account for the moisture potency relationship. Is that right?
No. So what they're saying is that as it is received, the potency will be as reflected as exactly the way that it is received. Not.
Yeah, I know you're probably not looking at the motion. There's more information on the page that talks about the pros of the motion versus the cons of the motion.
Hi, this is Anastasia, if I might be able to interrupt. I have it here. I just need the ball in order to present. That way we can all see. I don't know if Tari, if you're able to pass me that ball.
Okay, so let me just re-ask my question again. So the motion is that the test will be on an as-is test, and I'm trying to understand, just the context here. And the cons, at least the way I read the cons, it tells me that with an as-is test, or that there's recognition that there's a relationship between potency and moisture, and if that's not taken into account, or that would have to be taken into account, but in a different way than doing a dry weight process or procedure. Is that, am I right?
No. So what they're saying is there shouldn't be drying, and there also shouldn't be a correction afterwards. That the test should be reported on a wet weight basis, or an as is, as received. And it's saying, I think here he's saying that that if you did dry, some people are doing a correction, and they're doing a calculation after the fact. Is they're doing it as is, and then they're taking a moisture sample over here, and they're drying a portion for moisture, and then they're correcting back, and they should not be doing that. The moisture test, if Nick wants to speak up, the moisture test, if it's out of specification for moisture, it'll fail by merits of the moisture test that will be performed also.
Well, under the con, it says math would be needed to determine the dry weight basis. So.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what Mike was trying to deliver there. Nick, do you have anything to add?
I think he's just saying that you would need to use a theoretical calculation, but likely you wouldn't actually know what the water content was. You do some type of anyway, yeah. So math would be difficult because you really wouldn't understand what the moisture content was. You would understand the volatile content because likely you're drying, not doing like a Carl Fisher titration to find out actual water content.
So Nick, would the potency test as is be an accurate representation of potency without the dry weight piece?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, the product the labs receive now, so the flower lots, which is dried flower or mostly dried, is far more accurate to test as an as is as received basis than trying to dry weight it to 0% moisture for multiple reasons. One, the product the consumer receives has some amount of moisture in it. They're not receiving 0% moisture product, as well as the previous point, which is we are not asking the laboratories to have a perfectly representative test of moisture of doing like a Carl Fisher titration. So, if you do drying, you can get extra moisture because you're actually just burning off terpenes or what have you.
Okay, so because this motion is about potency, we don't have to worry about terpenes right now or dry weight or anything. We're just looking at potency, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you take out 10% of the water, reduce the mass by 10%, which is in effect increasing potency by 10%. So it does play a pretty big difference.
So this is Kendra. The testing on an as-is or a dry weight basis has been a conversation that has been going on for quite some time. In the LCB rules, the statement is, and it references the AHP, the American Herbological Pharmacopoeia, which becomes a little bit convoluted when it's trying to apply. There was a memo issued to all of the marijuana testing laboratories in 2015 that stated that dry weight correction for potency was not allowable and the samples must be tested as is. If we move forward, it's a fairly difficult thing to directly control for in some of the places we see whether or not that happens there in standard operating procedures for the laboratories that are reviewed. The pesticide group made a recommendation, and I believe we approved it, is that samples should be tested as is. Ultimately, that means if the sample shows up dry, the lab tests it as such. They make no other corrections to it. And this is a similar motion, is that for potency, and it's in alignment with some other things, is that when the sample shows up, the lab in their processes does not correct or dry the sample. They test the potency and run the potency through their standard operating processes in the manner for which the sample was received, and that all labs would be doing that. I believe that is the motion in front of us, and just a little bit of background.
Thank you. I appreciate that background, Kendra. Hopefully the report will have a little bit more of that for the folks who aren't as immersed into the chemistry as our work group experts.
If I might jump in real quick, this is Jeff from Capital. I've been a part of this conversation quite a bit. Honestly, from my perspective, either way makes sense. We all have to be on the same page. If we test dry weight, if we test as is, it really doesn't matter. We can get to the same precise goal either way. I will point out practically that if we test as is, that like we do now, there's an enforcement issue where, people have not done that when they were supposed to, but also that a lot of the samples we receive in-house will then be dried prior to the lab receiving it, so that this really supports the idea again of sampling, which I know is outside of our scope, but again, it points back to that sampling issue.
Thank you, Jeff. I think that provides a lot of clarity for me then. Appreciate it. I have no more questions.
All right. Does anybody have, oh, go ahead, Annette.
Oh, I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess that was, it was, as the chair, I think I was supposed to do the motion piece. So yeah, if there are no other questions, would someone on the steering committee move to make the motion?
I'll move. It's Brad.
Okay, so the motion as the potency test will be an as-is test. That is the motion.
I'll second. This is Amber Wise.
Okay, there's a second. Is there any more discussion that needs to be had? Okay, then barring none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye from LCV.
All opposed say nay. Okay, motion passes. Thank you all for that discussion.
Great. All right. So I think that is probably all that we have for our potency work group today. And next up, we have a presentation from Caroline West with Department of Health with an update on the heavy metals work group. So if you're able to pass the ball over to Caroline, take it away.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, so I've got the ball. So let me get my screen shared here. Share my screen to make sure I'm doing the right one here. Do you guys see my PowerPoint by any chance? Did that work?
We do. We see it.
You see it.
Okay.
Actually, just before we go on real quick, I saw a chat come up from Kendra, and I think it was about, do we have a quorum for the steering committee voting members on the call today? And we have everybody except for Shelley Rowden from Department of Health. So I think we are in good shape. Mike is not here, but Mike is not a voting member of the steering committee. Do you have anything else? Do you have anything you want to add to that, Annette?
No, I think I think the answer to the question is yes, there is, with only one member absent. So I think we are good there.
Great. Okay. All right. I'll just turn it back to you, Caroline. I just wanted to answer that before we move ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So the metals work group has met twice so far, once on the 7th and once on the 22nd of July. And so I'll just give a brief update on both of those meetings. So first, this first slide just shows the members of our work group, and everyone was present. So that was exciting. We had everyone there for the discussion. And so the next slide here is just a little bit of a general update, as it says. So we discussed meeting frequencies. So we have 2 meetings currently set up in August, and then we only have 1 per month through December. So we are looking to set up at least 1 more in early September, and then 1 more in late November to try and get it back to that more to the 2 to 3 week time period in between our meetings. And so as soon as we get the doodle polls for that, we'll get those other 2 set up. But we do have at least 1 per month, and like I said, 2 in August already. We talked about just the general timeline for the metals testing work group and the charter itself. And like when the final report was due and all of those kinds of things. We talked about the charter deliverables, the tasks, roles, and responsibilities, and what's expected of each member relating to participation, attendance, and goals. And then we started kind of diving into more of the meat of the stuff. And we started with talk about total versus speciated arsenic, because as we talked about in the last steering committee, we're still waiting to see if that term is going to be removed. However, moving forward, it seems like the consensus is that that will happen. And so we are not going to be considering speciation at this time unless we're told otherwise. And then we started talking about some of the pros and cons of the performance-based methods versus universal methods. And we're pretty much unanimous on the performance-based as well. So then we kind of started talking about, well, where we're going to start with that. And we've asked some of the members to add some of their methods and other documents to the box so that everyone had access to that to be able to kind of look through some of that so we would be able to continue the discussion at the next meeting. And so again, for our second meeting, we had 100% attendance. So again, that was awesome. And of course, same people. And then my last slide is just a little update on that meeting. We don't have any motions yet for this one, but we probably will have at least 2 motions come the next one. One will be based on the performance-based methodology, and the other one will be based on moving forward with total arsenic only. But anyway, we decided to start with the EAM 3.6, which is kind of the performance criteria that the FDA's EAM manual goes through. And there are different sections through the whole EAM manual itself. And so there's about 21 documents, give or take, I believe, right now in the box. And probably a good 17 or so of those happen to be EAM sections of this manual. Like 4.7 is the actual analytical method that they would go through for metals. But we wanted to start with 3.6 because we're not saying that we're going to adopt the EAM, but we figured it was a good starting place to kind of see what kind of criteria was out there. So we started discussing the performance criteria specifically for the ICP-MS platforms, which is the platform that we believe most people are currently using and will be using in the future. There is some discussion about going back and re-looking at some other technologies like cold vapor or graphite furnace, AA, some other platforms that might be used to see if we would need to change in the criteria for those, or if the criteria could still be universal throughout the platforms. But like I said, we just wanted to start with what we believe would be the main or the gold standard, which is ICP-MS, and with kind of a microwave or a hot block digestion. And then we were discussing some of the different types of QCs that are out there, the different kinds of frequencies, the differences in the nomenclature, all of that kind of stuff. And so Dragon and Medicine Labs have agreed to submit some of their QC protocols to the box by the 3rd of August. And so we'll have a little bit more information for us to kind of compare. We also discussed changing some of the curve statistics rules, because for the correlation of the curve, a lot of the times, some methods will refer to an R value, some will refer to an R squared value. And it's more universal to see these things in R squared. So we thought, just so there's not any confusion, it might be nice to just kind of make everything R squared versus have R. We also had a long discussion about the differences between IDLs, which is an instrument detection limit, LODs, which is a limit of detection, MDLs, which is a method detection limit. So these are all viable and acceptable ways of doing limits of detection. So we haven't finalized anything on this discussion, but there was some thought that we might just have the SOPs kind of describe which was used and the methodology behind how they came up with that result. But like I said, nothing's finalized on that. We're still in discussion. We're considering maybe kind of using some of the same language that the pesticide group used. But that's something that we are going to be looking into at our next meeting, because we haven't had time to actually read that language, or not everyone in the group has had that opportunity. So that's also being discussed. We also, of course, started discussing some of the different interferences, like the polyatomic, the isobaric, there's memory effects, there's matrix interferences, all sorts of stuff. There's different ways of handling these things versus corrective equations, adding gold in there for the mercury stabilization, just different ways you can handle that. So we started a discussion on interferences, which we will continue. And then we did discuss what the PT group had asked us to about the PT matrices for metals, and we all agreed that hemp seemed like it was fine because we do a full digestion. So it really shouldn't matter if it was hemp or if it was actual marijuana matrix. And then we're going to continue to look through all of the EAM sections, as well as the other methods and SOPs that are going to be in that box, so that we can start kind of comparing what some of the testing labs are currently doing versus what some of the federal regulations for like normal food and environmental applications are. And then I agreed to make a chart that will kind of compare some of these different types of QCs and some of the names and what's kind of the same and blah, blah, blah throughout these different protocols. And so that it would be a little easier, I think, by our next meeting, which is on the 11th of August, we'll be able to have a good discussion and hopefully kind of start hammering out what terminology we might think would be best to harmonize in order to get everyone on the same page. And I think that's pretty much all I have right now. So if anyone has any questions about any of that, feel free to ask and I'll do my best to answer. Or I'll give the ball back, or you can take the ball back, I guess I should say, because my little thing just minimized as well. So I got to figure out how to get that back out.
For that great presentation, Caroline.
Yeah, Caroline, thank you. That was quite informative.
Oh, good.
Good thinking.
All right. Does anybody have any questions, or anybody from the work group have anything else they want to add? Okay. Well, our next thing on the agenda here is an update on from a client update. So I'm wondering if the agencies that are working on the client piece, if they have anything that they would like to share about any progress or any work that's happened in developing the client.
This is Kendra from LCB. There's been no additional meetings specific to the client. The bulk of that work is finished. The next step that is taking place is that rules coordinators are getting together. We've had one meeting, and there will be a second meeting connected to the timeline and sequence mapping related to rules. Once that work has been completed, we're going to combine the work that the rules coordinators have completed with the client conversations to move up to agency leadership to determine the path forward. But there's no new information related to the client.
Great. Thank you for that update. Something popping up in the chat. Carolyn just says, thanks for that info. It'll help us now to know we should definitely look into other platforms sooner than later. Oh,
I'm sorry. It looks like I had a private chat and I accidentally answered to everyone. So someone was just saying to me that they're not going to be using ICP-MS. So I was just saying, okay, well then maybe I'll prioritize looking into those other platforms sooner rather than later. So that's what that was about. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry, I started reading it thinking it was something about the client, but I didn't read it through first.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem at all. I'm glad everybody's having, sorting those things out. All right. Any other thoughts from any other agencies regarding the client or any of the rules work? Okay. All right. I'm gonna do one little swap in the agenda. Looks like we put the public feedback before the report update. I'm gonna just swap those. I think it makes more sense to talk about the report first, and then the public feedback piece. Sorry to put you on the spot, Jen, but I'm wondering if you or Sarah have any updates on the latest status of the report.
Sure. So the report was distributed to the legislature on time on July 1st. And then, we've been able to send the report out to the listserv. So I think folks have been able to see that there. And we shared it with all the members of the task force as well. So great work in getting the report finished on time and distributed. And so far, I don't think we've gotten a lot of feedback at this point that I know of.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Let's see. Do we have anyone from the public joining us today? Anastasia, are you able to see?
Yeah, we have a number of folks on the other line there.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll jump into our public feedback session. Do you have thoughts, Tarlin or Anastasia, about how you would like to coordinate this so we don't have folks speaking at the same time?
I think a hand raising or a chat would probably be best, so I can monitor that.
Okay, great. Yeah. So if folks that are calling in or on the video from the public, if you could raise your hand or send a chat to Tarlin Poole there, or just the general chat, and let us know that you have something you'd like to share. That's probably, and then we'll just call on you one by one. So if anyone from the public has something to share, go ahead and raise your hand or send a chat.
Yeah, and I'm listed as the host, Epicology host, if somebody wants to send me a message. I'm not seeing anything. Give it another.
Yeah, give people a minute to think about if there's anything they'd like to say.
I'm not seeing anything, Jess.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to be adjourning an hour early today. I just want to take a minute and thank everybody for coming to the meeting, and especially for our presenters, to Caroline and Ryan, and Brad as well, presenting updates from the work group and the new motion that we passed. Yeah, thanks everyone for showing up and putting your minds towards this process. Thank you for that. Annette, do you have any parting words for the group?
No, I think that things are moving along great. I know that we've taken this pretty far, and I think it's really good. And I just really appreciate everybody's input. Sometimes the process might feel a little slow, but I think we have some hard nuts that we have to crack, and we want to make sure we do it right. So So sometimes slow and steady is good and is better. And I appreciate all the agencies and the staff and energy they're putting into it, and the labs. Just another, just a kudos, great job, and hang in there. This is a long process, and you're really helping make it better. And I so really appreciate that. And yeah, I think that's just keep hanging there and stick with us, and we'll get there.
All right. Thanks, everybody. All right. Well, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you again next month.
Thanks
Bye,
again.
everyone.